Jabari Shaw, Sapna Lau, Andrew Krantz, and Corey Martin.
All right, good evening, everyone. I am delighted to be here to host this panel. It is really great that this conference is happening during Reggae Month. We all want to just again say, our heartfelt thanks to the organizers for inviting us and for putting it on. It's been great. Lawyers who are now going to speak very quickly. Our topic is contracts. It's quite wide. And we are at the Island Music Conference. So we have agreed amongst us how we're going to handle the topic generally. We're going to speak about essential areas of those contracts, and then we are going to open the floor to any questions you may have. This is an international disclaimer from Germany, from the United States, from Jamaica, and Japan. The comments and opinions we share with you this evening do not constitute legal advice. Any questions that we will field and answer in the hypothetical. Please do not take it for legal advice. If you need legal advice, consult a lawyer. We just have to say that. All right, so thank you for all joining us. The room has thinned, so we're going to move pretty quickly. Let me start with Sapna. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, your practice.
So my firm is called The Law Firm. I have been an attorney for almost 22, 23 years. I'm based in New York. I go to between New York, Miami, LA. I work a lot in the reggae music. I represent Kamani Marley, who you'll see tomorrow. I work with a couple of hip-hop acts, Essence Music Festival, and I just love what I do.
All right, Corey, tell us about yourself.
Everyone, Corey Martin, the managing partner of Granderson De Roche. We're a full-service entertainment firm with offices in Los Angeles and also in New York. Our areas of practice are music, film, TV, digital media, and in addition to everything else, we also do corporate transactions as well.
Okay, Andrew.
Andrew Krantz. First, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank from the bottom of my heart Miss Sharon Burke, Shaggy, and Judy for the invitation to speak today. I'm a music attorney, occasionally moonlight as a commercial litigator in New York City. I have an office in Manhattan. I represent a handful of seminal dancehall artists, Massacre, Bounty Killer, maybe one that I can't announce today for purposes, I just want to be political, and represent a number of music publishers, record labels, producers, recording artists, and that's it. I cover the waterfront of agreements that germinate from representing those folks.
Jabari Shaw. I'm from Atlanta, but I currently reside in Cincinnati, Ohio. Work for a law firm called Voorhees, Sater, Seymour, and Pease. I'm in the intellectual property group. Specifically, I deal with a lot of sports and entertainment matters, run the gamut of agreements from brand protection, enforcement, down to talent management. So.
All right, great. And I'm Roderick. I've been a lawyer for 27 years. I've represented Marley, Toots, rest in peace, Beenie Man, and a number of other artists, events, producers, and still practice in the area in IP law. So Corey, we're going to start with you. And we're going to first look at the recording agreement, which is a typical agreement that an artist will be faced with in looking to do an album. So Corey, can you start us off looking at the term of an agreement like that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that for any artist entering into an agreement, a recording agreement, the most relevant question that they're going to ask is, well, what's the term? How long am I locked in to this agreement? And I think it's best to think about the term not so much as a specific time, but moreover, a time frame. And so specifically, the term of the agreement is, in a recording contract, is typically what's called the contract period, plus whatever options may be held by the record label. Typically speaking, you'll have an initial term, an initial contract period, and then the label will hold between 3 and 4 options, which are their exclusive options. Only they have the ability to kind of extend the term. So essentially what happens is you enter into the agreement, they have the first contract period, and that initial contract period normally lasts for the later of 12 months or 9 months after any releases that may have been delivered and then released by the record label. To the extent the label then elects to extend the term by exercising their options, those options, which will then run concurrently and successively, will again run for the later of 12 months after the relevant contract period, at the beginning of that contract period, or again, 9 months after any albums which may have been released during that contract period. So in real life, when you think about it, the effective term can run for as short as 12 months, but more often than not, and if you have in the case of a successful artist, and the label is going to exercise all of their options under the recording agreement, the term can extend for as long as 5 or 6 years. So it's good for anyone who's an aspiring artist and kind of looking at trying to get a record deal and thinking about how long they're going to be locked in. It's good to kind of keep in mind the fact that you're essentially signing away an exclusivity to that label for a period of time that could run for as long as 6 years.
Okay, great. You wanted to add something, Andrew?
Well, I'm going to just lay out the concept of what a royalty. Typically, an artist, when they sign a recording agreement, they're going to receive an advance, and that advance is going to be recouped. And then once it's recouped, as provided in the recording agreement, you're going to receive an artist royalty, right? And one of the things I want to point out, aside from an advance, is the recording agreement is a unique thing because every artist, unless you negotiate the deal carefully, you have to negotiate it carefully. The artist is going to stand behind, to one degree or another, every dollar that is spent on and in connection with the recording of the record, the marketing and promotion of the record. Obviously, the advance is an in-pocket advance that's recouped against the artist royalty, but the artist stands behind to varying degrees, and the attorney's job is to, maybe limit recoupability. But to varying degrees, it's going to be recouped, right? And it recoups, depending on how you negotiate the deal, and depending on the artist royalty, it may recoup a little bit more slowly than you'd like. There are different structures of royalties. Again, you don't want to get caught up too much in the numbers. You could say I have a 22-point royalty is an all-in for an artist, might be a little high. Sometimes it's 18, 15%. I wouldn't get caught up on the percentages. Obviously, you want a higher number, but if you don't understand how the royalties are being calculated in your agreement, you're going to be in some trouble. You want to have the right team in place. You want the lawyers that understand the agreements in and out. You want a manager who has been there and done that many times before. And frankly, you want a business manager that understands numbers and the business of contracts. Maybe they've audited a few record labels before. You really want to get into the weeds with your team and understand what that royalty means and how it's calculated. Now, typically, in a recording agreement, you will see an all-in royalty of anywhere from 14 to 15 points on the low end, sometimes going up to 20, 22 points on the high end, and it escalates over time. Obviously, you want to get a higher royalty from the get-go, but that doesn't all. It all depends on where the artist is and what bargaining position he has. There are another set of scenarios where you may have a distributor that acts something like not really a label, because at the end of the day, a distributor fulfills a demand. But you do have some distributors out there that will do P&D deals, pressing and distribution, and they'll provide marketing services. What they'll also provide, and we see a number of them now, we see Virgin, we see Empire, they really step up to the plate, the Orchard, and they'll write big checks. They'll write big checks to an artist. Usually the artist will license their content, license the master to the distributor, which is very often owned by one of the majors. But in this case, the royalty will be structured maybe on a net profit scenario. They're laying out this money, and typically it should be the dollars come off the top. All of the expenses, which an artist should have the right to pre-approve reasonably, but there needs to be some checks and balances. Otherwise, you can find out that an in-house producer signed to the label or signed to a production company. You want to make sure if it's getting charged back to you, you know what it is. But under these 50-50 net profit deals, sometimes 60-40, they can escalate. The dollars are supposed to come off the top, right? And then they are supposed to, the artist and the distributor, label, are supposed to split 50-50, 60-40, or whatever the percentage is. But very often what the distributors will do is they will take the costs related to the album, which is supposed to come off the top prior to the calculation of net profits, and they will debit it to the artist, your 50% share, when the reality is, if you're negotiating it properly, you really only want to stand behind what you've gotten in pocket as an artist, and that should be recouped against your net profit royalty. But what you'll see very often, as I said, is you'll still have the distributor label. Even if you're licensing the record to them, you'll get it back over time, 5 to 10 years, 7 years, sometimes longer. But you don't want to see, in a net profit scenario, you also standing behind all of the costs related to the album when they really should be coming off the top.
Great, thank you, Andrew. So that tends to be the area that artists tend to look for first in the contract. How much am I getting? What's the check you're cutting to me? How quickly am I going to get that? The real question is, what are you giving up for this check? So before we get to all the computation of how you're going to recoup, whether you're licensing your master or whether you're signing a work for hire contract, we need to know what you're giving up. So Sapna, tell us some more now about the question of grant of ownership and all those related topics.
Right, so everything comes with a price, right? So like you said, you are getting something, but what are you giving in return? So let's start with the easy thing, your name, image, likeness. So you have to make sure that it's always your approved name, image, or likeness. You never want to have an image or any likeness used that is not approved by you. So that part is easy. The more difficult part comes with what Andrew was talking about with royalties and advances. It all contingent on whether are you owning the master recordings or are you licensing it. If you're licensing it, you're giving the label the rights to license the material for whatever term that you agree upon, and then it goes back to you, so you don't give up your ownership. But with that, you don't have a high advance, if any. You probably have a very low artist royalty rate because, again, you're not giving up ownership, right? So, and then there's probably going to be some 50-50 or 60-40 distribution. On the other hand, if you're giving up or assigning your ownership of the master recordings, then you could demand more. You could demand to have a higher royalty. You can demand to have bigger advances. So in some cases, I know everybody thinks, oh my God, an artist giving up masters is always a bad thing. But in the music business, especially now, the deal terms are, they're always being negotiated. So nothing's always completely bad, nothing's always completely good. It's all about what you negotiate and what are you getting out of it. So if you are giving up your ownership to stuff, make sure that you're getting what you need in return. That's also including marketing, promotion money. You also want to make sure that in that, whatever you're granting, that there's a release commitment. So you have to make sure that between 3 to 6 months of you delivering your product, your recordings, that they're releasing it, because there's no good it's sitting on a shelf. So you want an opt-out clause to make sure that in case they're not releasing it, you can terminate the contract. So those are the main ones. And then also things like your album artwork, who owns that? Sometimes you want to use the same image years later, and do you own it? Does the label own it? So you want to make sure that those terms are also in agreement.
Great, thank you, Sapna. So basically, you have a number of different rights that you can grant in that agreement. You have the rights to the music, you have the rights to your image and likeness, and potentially the right to your brand. Okay, so you have to think about all of those different areas of grant of rights when you're looking at these types of agreements. Jabari, we have heard they're no longer as new as they used to be, but a popular term out there now is a 360 contract. Tell us a bit about what entails in a 360.
Yeah, so a 360 is basically, it's the house deal. When you think about the contract, a regular recording contract may look more like a studio apartment. Everything is right there for you. The house deal means that when you're walking into the house, on the left-hand side, you have your recording deal. On the right-hand side, you may have a deal with a film company. In the back where the kitchen is, you may have a deal with a brand. And we've all seen shatas where they say, yo, if you sell this, off of mine. And that's what the label is doing, is they're getting a little bit of everything. And those deals, they make sense in certain circumstances and situations. If you're Beyonce, yeah, that makes sense. You know that at 4 a.m. when you are selling your show, 250,000 people are in line to get it. You're gonna make that money, you're gonna recoup. That makes sense. If you are a small artist coming out, maybe that 360 doesn't make sense for you. You don't wanna give up just everything because you don't really have much leverage. And it's important to have a bit of leverage when you're going to those situations. Beyonce, Kendrick Lamar, Buju Banton, they have significant leverage when they're walking into a deal, whereas maybe a Valiant needs a bit more time and probably wants a bit more time. If we were representing Valiant, we'd probably say, hey, before the first deal comes in, let's wait to see what the real horizon looks like. Right. You're just seeing the light for a second. Let's see what happens in a couple of days. If one person is willing to pay you some money, many more people are probably willing to pay you some money. So good thoughts.
Corey, go ahead. I'm going to ask you something after. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add, piggybacking on what Jabari just laid out, I think it's also important to understand how 360 deals came into existence in the first place, right? On some level, it's kind of a vestige of that time frame where physical sales of albums, going back to probably CDs, were diminishing, and the labels are really scrambling to kind of figure out, the record companies were scrambling to figure out, how do we compensate for this loss of the sale of physical albums? At the same time, it was, when it was at the outset of the streaming wave, where Napster and these other platforms were essentially pirating music. And so the labels, the record companies were kind of in scramble mode. And they realized that, in large part, that albums really serve as a platform for the artists to go out there and do shows, for the artists to go out there and sell merch, and they wanted to put their hand in that pot. So that's really how 360 deals kind of came into existence in the first place.
But I'll add to that, and we're here to tell you, because you see the majors who in many instances had equity in these streaming services, right? They're now living off the fat of the land. On the catalog that they've already marketed and promoted for years, they have to do nothing with it, and all it does is stream night and day, and they make tens of millions, okay? And they don't do so bad either with the new emerging artists. And I'm here to tell you, I'm sure Corey, Sapna, and Jabari, you can all vouch for this. The recent deals I've done with majors, I've drawn a line in the sand, and I've said, we're not doing 360. And what they'll do is they'll say, okay. And they know they have to say okay because we know how much money they're making on streaming. And what they'll do is they'll say, will you agree that if we find you an opportunity and you take it, no obligation, you'll pay us a percentage? And I say, okay, we can deal with that. but we're not giving up our non-record rights or ancillary rights. If you want to make a deal, and Bravado, Universal, you want to try to make a deal with us as for a merch deal, I'll give you maybe a very short window, not 30 days, not 40 days, not a matching right if we don't make a deal that I get to go around town and come back to you. You'll get 10 days, make it something happen. If not, I go on. And, you know, that's...
And publishing too, they include that, the co-publishing deals and that. So you have to watch out for making sure that if you're doing a strict album deal, publishing is not included. And if it is included, you need to understand if it's going to be an admin deal or are you giving up part of your publishing. And that should really be a whole separate contract anyway.
Great, exactly. So Corey, that's where I was going to go in terms of term and how these contracts have evolved recently. So you don't just have your standard recording contract anymore. You have admin contracts. You have the master license agreement. So can you tell us a bit about those types of agreements?
So the important thing to note about those sorts of agreements is, you know, I think it provides additional flexibility to the artists. You know, particularly, you know, what we've found over the last 10 years or so, you know, going back 10 years and beyond, it was all about getting a record deal. Everybody wanted to get a deal. Now, I think one of the great things that has emerged is a more of an entrepreneurial mindset where artists are coming in the door and they want to own their masters. Okay, and so they're much more interested in looking at structures in which they may assume a lot of the upfront costs associated with the production of the music, and that they may just want to do a distribution deal. You know, that may not be for everyone, but I think that adding that as an option that allows you to own the real estate, okay, to own those master recordings in conjunction with the other rights. If you're an artist that is a writer, you're going to accumulate a whole suite of assets, and those sort of distribution deals allows you to have the leverage to treat that relationship with the major labels, with the record companies, as more of an equitable partnership, as opposed to a situation where, you know, you're almost an indentured servant to the labels.
Sure, very important point. So an admin deal is where you keep your master and you agree with the company for them to administrate your publishing. And so you keep ownership of your publishing. Historically, a lot of recording contracts would have you granting your publishing, or at least half of it, to the recording label. And so what you would find is you get your advance, you get songwriters' royalties, but you don't have your publishing. Jabari, can you tell us what is this particular right that relates to publishing, and why is that so important?
Yeah,
in today's world in particular.
It's a copyright. I mean, it's very important. We call them bundle of rights in IP land, and why they're so important is because that's where the money is. If you don't have a copyright, you can't sue anybody in the United States. So if somebody is infringing on your IP, so if somebody takes my song and then decides to rip it and put it in an Instagram commercial or a television commercial that makes $1 million, if I didn't register that copyright, I've already diminished my ability to collect damages. And that's a big deal because IP is so precious. If you don't focus on making sure your business portion is set up, saying, hey, if I'm setting up a song, I need to, make sure I'm doing a copyright, registering it. I should clarify that and say the registration is what you have to do. You get a copyright, and I think we've talked about this at the conferences, as soon as it's put in a tangible medium. But when you register it in the United States, you immediately have the ability to roll down to court and say, okay, I'm gonna sue you, and that's going to stop you from really infringing. We have a large problem with that in Jamaica, and a lot of it is, this is a music business. It's a cost of doing business. We've heard about artists who, may have made a song that sounds familiar to somebody else's song. And if I'm a big gorilla in the room and can look down at small Jamaica and say, all right, if I take a little bit of that song and use it, what is the worst that's gonna happen to me? Well, Jamaican artists sometimes don't have the infrastructure or the dollars to really say, okay, I'm gonna go battle with this big, bad label for 2 weeks in court, or 6 months in court,
Or just
6
discovery.
years.
Just
So,
discovery.
Yeah, I mean, even filing the case. I mean, the moment we file a case, it's $10,000 US, and
So
it's
we
only
had
going up from there.
we had a pretty interesting case that Toots had signed a settlement agreement with Universal and some other parties for his biggest hits, 34 tracks. And part of that settlement agreement usually says you discharge, you will not take any other action, etc. A lawsuit was then filed on his behalf and another company by another infringing party who had happened to sign that settlement agreement, and it covered one of the tracks, amongst others, in that settlement agreement. Now, that settlement agreement said, if you seek to bring any further litigation in any of the enclosed assets, you will breach this agreement, and the consequence for that is the following. And so, even though on the face of it, under English law, there were some very strong arguments to be made, the settlement agreement had already been signed, and it said what it covered. So, with all of the anger of what you may have given away, you couldn't get it back. So it's really important that even when you get that distribution agreement, I'm sure some of you have seen a distribution agreement with grant of rights, speaking about work for hire, speaking about grant of publishing. Andrew, you're
Well-
chomping at the bit. Or Sapna, go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say there's also a difference between the copyright and trademark, because a lot of times you keep hearing people say, "Oh, I want to trademark my music." You
Yes.
do a registration, a copyright of your music, you trademark your name of your brand, and so there's a clear distinction about that. Just wanted to make
That's
that
quite
point.
important. The other thing on Jabari's point earlier, before we go to Andrew, is with you keeping the ownership of your masters, what you keep is a grant of sync rights. So you're now able to ensure that if someone in the Super Bowl wants to use your song, you earn that fee, which can sometimes be hundreds of thousands, $500,000 for artists, just for the sync right to use your song in a 30-second or a 45-second ad. So that is why ownership of masters tends to be so valuable.
And
to the
it
labels.
may be a lot easier to license to license for a sync in a film, television show, or major commercial campaign when you own the master and you own a good chunk of the publishing, right? Because we know when it's 45 people because a producer has sampled a record and there's a loop maker and whatever, you have to go to a multitude of music publishers and administrators on the pub side to get licenses for their respective shares for the sync right on the publishing side. But the more publishing you control, the better off you are. And if you own the master, you may very well clean up because people sometimes want to go in and get that license quickly. Maybe they tried to license an Al Green record, they couldn't. But they can come to you, and you're a one-stop shop, or as much of it as you can be, right, on the publishing side.
All right, great. Anything else anyone wants to add? I want to open the floor now to questions. We're running a little late.
Check. You know, so I have something to say.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
First of all, thank you all for this panel. This is a very important panel. I'm listening to you guys right now. I kind of wish this panel was a little earlier in the day, to be honest with you. And the reason why is the knowledge, and we are kicking some of the best knowledge. Lawyers, I've been saying it over and over, so lawyers are the best friend for every artist. You need not just a lawyer, but a good lawyer. Okay? A good lawyer. Now, a couple of things you have to sit down. I'll give you like a scenario. There's a scenario that happened where Universal is literally two entities. There's Universal Domestic and Universal International. Just give an analytical insight. When you're in a bidding war that is leverage, I have never signed a deal that wasn't in a bidding war. In 1993 with Old Carolina, that was a bidding war. I went with the highest bidder, At that time, we signed for £1 million, which was never unheard of in reggae or dancing at that time. We had another bidding war again with Love Me, Love Me, and I signed that bidding war was won by MCA, and we signed that deal. At that time, reggae and dancehall didn't really sell huge numbers before that. So when you're going into this bidding war, you have two companies bidding for an artist that is selling, have a big record with Janet Jackson. Both of them are trying to sign it. They get to a point where there's a cap. So they're not gonna go over $500,000 on this artist because he's reggae and there's no track record of reggae selling past $1 million at that time in albums. You might have a single that does well, over $1 million, but you will not have an album at that time. So they reached that cap. So now they have to sweeten the deal because none of them could pass the $500,000 cap. So now they sweeten the deal. They say, you know what, Shaggy? We're gonna give you a 0.5 point escalation on every million sold. That sounds like a sweet deal. Except because they can't give you any more money, they're capped. Because if they do the numbers, reggae don't sell past $1 million, so we're not going to invest that more than $500,000 at that time. So we took the sweet deal, yes, a $500,000 escalation on every million sold. In the record company mind, they're like, that's reggae, they never sold over $1 million anyway, so give them that. And so you take that. So when Hot Shot happened and we're selling millions and millions of records now, you didn't just sell 1 million, we sold 10. 10 million at a half a point escalation simply means I am the highest paid guy in the music industry history. Right?
Wow.
Don't fucking clap because you haven't finished hearing the story yet. When you have an idiot lawyer or a lawyer that don't know what they're doing and a management that don't know what they're doing, didn't know that the record companies too. It is Universal Domestic and Universal International. Corey, you know this. There's no escalation on a license. Am I right? So basically, in America, we could get that escalation. For the rest of the world, hey, we Universal Domestic license it to Universal International.
It's the same company.
I just got fucked. Because you didn't have the right representation. You didn't have the right people around you. You got to find pros. These guys are pros. You got to find pros. And so you lose. Another thing they didn't say to you, which you can all know, when the record company is giving you your royalties, right? They'll pay you your royalties, where you get paid quarterly or whatever it is. Did you all know that you have to audit? Because they ain't gonna pay you all your money. No matter how much record you sell, they're not gonna pay you all your money. You're gonna have to audit. In other words, you're gonna have to hire somebody to get you paid. They're supposed to pay you. That's the deal you have. But then you look at them, hey, you know, I didn't get my royalty statement for the type of records I want. When I'm doing my calculations myself, I'm not getting the same amount of numbers. He's like, you know the record company president said to me when I said that to him? Audit us. The record company president that I'm a big wig at that time because I had to sell a lot of records. I walk it. Say, audit us, audit us. Come on, Shaggy, you know you gotta audit us. You know what the audit guy gonna take? In some cases, 15% of your money just to pay you. Unless you have a good lawyer company that has maybe an auditing department in there that does it for the 5% that you got him for. All of these things you have to learn. Because these are things that are gonna hit you. I don't want to take up so much time, it's late. There's a lot more I would have discussed. I wish you guys were earlier. I thank you very much. Thank you for spreading the knowledge. I open the floor to the microphone. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Shaggy, I agree with you that this panel should be a lot earlier. And I want to ask Jabari a question about the local legal fraternity that provides the type of representation that is required so that some of the local artists, one, aren't discouraged about growing Jamaican music of any genre because they're confused about their rights and the ability for them to earn without looking outside of Jamaica and facing some of these behemoths. Some of the challenges that we're having when we talk about the death of reggae music and others lies in this area. And it's extremely important that the local representation, jurisdictional rights are worked out before the talents that still exist at any level can really compete with the rest of the world.
Yeah, I come to Jamaica fairly often, and I do a good amount of work with Jamaican lawyers on things in the industry and outside of the industry. And working in the US at a quote-unquote big law firm, the level of sophistication with our practice of law is, it's kind of ridiculous. If I need help, I've got 600 lawyers with 600 networks. If I need a contact anywhere, it's just, hey, who knows somebody at Nike? And in 2 minutes, I'll get 50 responses. In Jamaica, there are Jamaicans just like myself overseas. I'm not the only one. We have to be encouraged to come back. I come back because my family is a part of this industry. But it's also on us to make sure that we're empowering those students at the law school down here to connect with us. And I'll be honest, I have to do a better job at it because it's important. There can't just be me. I am a product of nepotism. I was born into this. I think in Jamaica, I was at one of the panels yesterday. My firm does a lot of trademarking worldwide. We use foreign associates. So I made a connection yesterday and said, hey, I want to be investing my big law firm dollars down on the island. Let me partner with you and you can be our foreign associate in Jamaica because it's much better for me to be able to show my client this is somebody that I know versus somebody that we're just getting a referral from. And Jamaica, we're fully capable of controlling our own narrative. But to do that, we have to focus on our narrative. When I'm in Kingston and see a Starbucks, it rubs me the wrong way. Because I don't come down to have Starbucks. I come down for Blue Mountain. And so I understand what big business does. Some of my clients, my US clients, have facilities here. And it frustrates me because if I was on those matters, I would make sure that as a part of those deals, we're building a school, we're investing in something. I have an MBA along with my law degree. And the reason I got that was because I was in a deal and one of the lawyers that was very prominent, very experienced said, whoa, 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 whoa. We don't want to be taking business advice from your lawyer. So I got an MBA. And now I'm a rogue. So I can give you business advice and give you your legal advice and really protect your interests. We zealously advocate for our clients, all of us up here. That is our duty. That's what we're called to do, is zealously advocate. So when we talk about these deals, to be honest, nobody's happy at the end of a deal. If we've walked out and say, got you a great deal, Shaggy, yeah, man, you left some money on the table. Everybody's a little bit pissed off. And you say, hey, we got the best that we could get. Now, let's get to the next deal. There's a sickness amongst lawyers. As the deal gets done, the next one is on your mind. And all of us are probably juggling 50 to 60 matters at any time. One of the things that I want to say before I've ranted a bit, one of the things I want to say is, as artists, my firm does work on both sides. We are moving away from working with labels so that I can do more talent representation. A label has 50 clients. We have multiple clients. You are one artist. We can afford to get it wrong. You can't. So invest in yourself. The same way you're going to spend some money to go to the party, put your money aside and audit. Not just the record label, audit everybody. Yes, audit me. Yes, I'm confident in my abilities as a lawyer to say, hey, I'm that damn good, so audit me. Yes, challenge me against any other law firm. If one of us can't do something, I can guarantee you we're going to be calling the other. Conflict of interest, if I can't do something, I'm going to call Andrew or Sapna or Corey and say, hey, I can't do this matter, we're conflicted off. Take care of my client. And it's a small industry. When you get to the top, it's a few of us doing this at an excessively high level, and we all see each other all the time. So we don't kill each other in battle, but we wound each other up sometimes and then say, hey, let's go over round 2 next time with a different artist. So
Great. Before you jump in, Andrew, as the other Jamaican on the panel, I want to answer that frontally. Now, if you want to go and record the best roots reggae production based on a song you've written, do you go to a rap producer, do you go to a country music producer, or do you go to a reggae, roots reggae producer? Good. So the point is that everybody can say they're a lawyer, but I'm saying as artists, as people in charge of your own business and trying to chart your own destiny, do a little due diligence too. Just because that person said to you, yes, I can do it, and the price is less, don't mean you're going to get it done well. And one of the things that is frustrating to me is that I've done this for 27 years. So I'm not cheap. I'm probably cheaper than half of them. But I'm not cheap, so don't diss me. If you want to record a great reggae track that you have put blood, sweat, and tears in, and you say, you know what, I need this producer, you're going to find the money. I want to go Anchor because it's the best studio. I want to go Tough Gang. You're going to find the money. So if we keep thinking that a contract is just words, and we can Google it, or we can email Jabari and say, Jabari, what do you think about this clause? It don't work like that. Okay? It really doesn't work like that. And the reality is, none of us know everything. But there are people here, and we have relationships too. All right? So, I can't defend the Jamaican lawyers fully, but honestly, invest in yourself. Shaggy gave us a fantastic example, and that is the reality. Invest in yourself.
And I'm going to, you can go ahead and clap to that. I'm going to add one thing. The best deals you will get are the ones without exception that you will be prepared to walk away from. Okay? I don't care sometimes when I'm negotiating, I have somebody who wants something. So long as we're within the realm of reason, you know what? We're not going to do the deal unless we get this, and we just won't do it, right? And you have to be ready to say goodbye to it. More often than not, we get exactly what we want, but we must be prepared to say goodbye to it. There is no better bargaining position than that, right? If you're going to be money hungry and go chase checks, you're going to be a loser. It's a matter of time.
And I was just going to say, your dream team, when you were saying invest in yourself, it should be a great manager, a great attorney, a great business manager, a publicist, and a great agent. And you have your dream team. But if you're going to not want to invest in yourself or pay for a lawyer or pay for a publicist, it shows in the outcome.
Any other
question
questions?
in the corner?
Hi, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I'm just addressing the panel. How would you define a good contract from the moment an artist walks into a studio to record a song, and or what are some of the good legal steps they could take once they decide that I'm going to be an artist, I'm recording this song today, I'm engaging producers, I'm engaging a studio, I'm engaging managers. I would like to know that.
You're asking what contracts you would need in place? for that?
Yeah, what are some of the
Okay.
good steps that I can begin to take once I walk into that studio?
Okay.
Know that I'm dealing with producers.
Okay,
and
so the most
project.
simple thing you can do when you go out into the studio is a split sheet, meaning that just right off the bat, everyone that's either producing or writing lyrics that's in the studio that has any kind of publishing, you're all just writing your name and putting the percentage of what each of you owned in that song. That's just the simple thing you can do right away. You'll need a producer agreement with each producer that's in the room. If you have an artist that's featured on the song with you, you'll need the artist and side artist agreement with them. So that would be like right off the bat with the producer, featured artist, making sure your splits are all sorted from the beginning.
There's an app called Song Splits. A record executive just created this a couple of years ago. Google that. It takes care of it right there for you. You and your brethrens inside the studio, set time, boom. Everybody got the app, put it in the splits. Nobody's arguing about that later.
I just add quickly to that is that, in every document you need to look for what right are you granting. So if you come in as an artist, I'm sure you watch A Harder Day Come. Jimmy Cliff is at the gate. He's trying to get into studio. He didn't own the song in that movie, right? The producer says, sign here, take your money, gone. So if you see 3 words in there, work for hire, and you're not prepared to give up your rights in that production, don't sign it. And that's not legal advice, that's a suggestion. But as Sapna said, split sheet, the app, what other document are you signing to collect that money? Have you collected? Are you with a producer going in just as an artist on their label? Get the agreements. Really and truly, ask for them before you show up at the studio, if you can. That would be actually the best step.
What
about
AI?
That's a great question, Shaggy. I'm going to jump quickly on that, and I see everybody queuing up to talk about that. AI, so it's a huge question. And just this week, or last week, a court has decided that Hermé, the owners of Hermé, have the right to stop someone who has created an NFT based on their, I can't remember the name of the bag now, Birkin bag, I think it is, and has basically said it's iconic, and you're allowed to use your terrestrial intellectual property protection in a non-terrestrial space. So if you've been following NFTs or AI at all, there are 2 issues. One is that AI are now supposedly creating art and writing music and creating music and other production. And the question is, to my mind, and I'd be interested to hear what everyone else says, can a non-quote-unquote human, under the laws of copyright as we understand them, create? So that's a big question. But the other one is, we've had a lot of quote-unquote new creations, inventions, songs, other material that are being produced digitally, that are existing in digital spaces, and people are saying, we have rights to that, having quote-unquote created it digitally. So over to you guys.
Also, ChatGPT with the contracts. Just because you mentioned not Googling contracts and trying to use those, which is very important. But no, with ChatGPT, which is more AI, trying to write contracts and all
so
that.
So before I go quickly on that, the reality is that it may give you good language, it may not. It may use language from the state of Massachusetts for a contract you're signing with a label out of England. You don't know. You may get it and it doesn't even say where it's being used from, and the language will not conform with your copyright law or where you're trying to administer those rights. So it may give you really good-looking language and 6 or 7 paragraphs, but it will not deal with your subject matter. So you still have to be careful.
The governing law?
The
So just,
among other things.
yeah, just be clear about which governing law you're willing to sign off under, because that's what's going to govern your contract.
Yes, I think the technology is really, I guess, going to get better and better. But with the ChatGPT thing, it seems like you can literally say, I want a contract with an English record company or whatever. I mean, I know it's many years away, but I thought about that because you mentioned not doing a Google contract. But that particular thing, it's like you can tell it to write Oliver Twist, or you can tell it to write a book.
No.
It can do your exams for you. You know,
I'm
it's
with
kind of
you,
crazy.
and it is a threat. And 4 years ago, articles started saying it will completely disrupt the legal industry, and what will probably be left are just people who go to argue in court. But pretty much every other document, in terms of putting a document together, AI and those types of sites will be able to do.
I don't think so, and here's why. A large part of our practice is emotion-based. We control a lot of emotion. I think what AI can't do is recognize what matters for you as an artist or you as an individual. I may know something personally about you that this standard agreement, if we go back to the house example, when you go into that house, you may have a regular countertop, but you may like granite. Those terms in your contract that say things like, oh, I need to be given notice in 7 days. Well, that may be the standard language. Well, I can't respond in 7 days because I'm on the road. And we're on island time down here, so it's going to take me 14 days anyway.
I'll give you a good one on that. So the same case I told you about with Toots, it was in the Southern District Court of New York. He was on tour, so he could not appear. What he was to appear to was, if you don't appear, serious consequences will happen. So I was asked to attend as his local lawyer just to say, look, he's serious. Here's his contract. He's in wherever he was. This is why he can't be present. And it helps. So to that point, you cannot, ChatGPT will not be able to give you that level of intricacy and look at your particular set of circumstances. So you have to be careful.
The other thing I want to add, just in light of the fact that this is such a rapidly evolving area of law, a rapidly evolving aspect of society at large, is what are the implications, for example, with deceased artists? With deepfake technology and other tools, you're going to have artists who've been long deceased releasing new music in intonations and sounds that actually sound like them. And in certain instances, they're going to be doing it with the consent of the estates. But the thing that's even more nefarious is that I think you're going to see, music being released from deceased artists against the wishes of their estates as well.
Sure. And so...
Would you say that's coming?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, look, I can tell you that technology obviously already exists. And as to whether or not, those compositions see the light of day, I guess, remains to be seen. But I think the technology is already in place.
Well, now they're performing now, like you went and said, the ABBA show, which is a massive concert. It was live, it was great. It was when they were younger.
Yeah.
And they came out at the end with their old selves. But you enjoy the show as if it was a show. So artists are going to be able to stay home as long as they own their intellectual properties and own their brand, and basically said, okay, I license it out for that concert, you stay home and collect. Is that also possible?
It is, if I can just quickly, Corey, it is possible. And if you look at some of the contracts or you read about them, a lot of these recording agreements said technologies now known or in the future. So when we had the ringtone boom, a lot of artists went back to their record labels and said, look here, when I signed this, ringtones weren't a thing, so that's my money. And there has been litigation. Jamaican artists have litigated as well and settled, where they said, no, that technology was not understood when I signed the contract in 1984. So you can't now tell me you have the right, because you own the masters, to earn from ringtones. So to your point, Shaggy, this is really evolving, and it is even more important to hold on to those rights, because you may find another way of exploiting them legitimately and earn pretty good money that we don't understand now as a stream of income.
Rick Astley recently filed a lawsuit. Never Gonna Give You Up. Superstar 80s recording artist. My buddy Richard Bush. I'll say that lightly because he's a litigation monster, but he brought a lawsuit on Rick's behalf, because somebody recorded a sound-alike. So you can imagine as we move into AI what that's going to be. But now it's sending a chill in the air for those who may want to record songs that sound note for note as if it were Rick. And what's scary is he's bringing, well, scary or good for the artist, he makes his money on re-recording his own songs now, because the re-record restriction in his recording agreements have long since expired. So now he's bringing a unfair competition, claim to try to prevent these sound-alikes from happening, and that's going to be a precedent when we get into this AI technology.
Is there litigation now about, which I spoke about this yesterday, when technology has moved on from into streaming and downloads and all of that, right? Back our original contract, some of our music that is on these platforms, these streaming platforms, in our original contract, that was for physicals only, right? How does that reflect now that they're actually streaming, those same music and paying us the same rate under the contract of physical? Is there a litigation going on now? Are they trying to change that? What is going on? I heard some things here and there. I just want to hear what you guys have thought about that, or if there is anything that you can tell us.
Well, I know that there was Eminem, I guess the Bash Brothers brought that lawsuit a while ago, back in the day, before there was streaming. Of course, it was everything was based on a net license and a royalty. So here, technically, streaming is a license. You should be accounted on a net receipts basis as a license and not as a royalty, right? And that's what's going on now in the majority of these agreements, right? These recording agreements. Artists are being accounted to on a royalty basis on their streamings. It may be at source, but it's treated as a royalty all too often.
Good night. My name is Jamal Gordon, aka Jago. I am a law student studying here in Jamaica and an artist as well. I think I remember Jabari saying that the best thing for the industry is for lawyers like you guys to come back and interact with the industry here. But there's a lot of things that I heard just from being here that I did not know before. So my question is, from the micro level, what can persons do to empower themselves?
No, it doesn't match it.
Do you guys have seminars or programs? Because I know in the States they're constantly having different music business panels, music programs. I mean, this is the first one that we know of, for here, which is amazing. You need more of this. But perhaps in your school, you can organize for attorneys to come, even local attorneys to come, do like local programming in your own school. And then also, there's a ton of information that you could get online. You have books that we can recommend books that you could read to learn about the music business. Those would be great ways to start. And anything educational-wise, you can, go online, courses, speak to different professors, attend more programs like this.
And the other thing I could add, one of the things we were talking about backstage is several of us have been to the BISLA conference, which is an organization called the Black Entertainment and Sports Lawyers Association. They often have, or they always have, an annual conference, and that conference is often in the Caribbean, somewhere in the Caribbean. As a law student, they typically have a law student rate, so it's cheaper for you to attend. And it's a good opportunity not just to increase your knowledge, because the seminars that they have, the panels that they have are informative, but it's also good from kind of a networking and information sharing perspective.
And you get credit, and that's besla.org. And it's usually around November that they have it.
And that was actually created by Kendall Minter, who represented my grandfather, Denroy Morgan. So that has ties to Jamaica. I think we should also use our power as a culture and an industry to do things like find ways to get our law students into internships with Sony and Universal and Peacock and these companies. VP, there should be somebody working at VP from the law school at all times in all 3 locations. I'm an action guy, so contact me. We'll figure something out.
Thank you.
Check. Oh, okay. On that note, Mark Foster, businessman, I'm also a law student finishing up next year at UWI. And they said that law was being saturated because they expanded the law faculty, but we are seeing where a lot of students are actually interning online with overseas companies. They don't even leave the country. So that's really a good route. And speaking to what Shaggy is saying about a good lawyer, when you guys enter the business, you can't just take up a law student who just graduated and look over a contract. They don't have any experience. You need a lawyer that's in the field, have the experience, can look at a contract blindfold and say, oh, this needs to change. Not everybody can just do that, even if they're in the industry for years, right? So my question still, I have a friend that produces music. I'm trying to invest in him. I heard you speak of, because you have to establish yourself down here first before you approach the labels overseas. And you spoke with the contracts in between the artists and the labels overseas. But locally, you speak about the split sheet in perspective of the producer and the artist. But like myself now, as a business person, going to invest, create a budget, and try to get them established. Speak more to that contract between myself and the artist. How could I be guided with that?
Are you coming in as an investor only, or in what capacity are you providing the funding for the project? As an investor, or are you wanting to have some ownership? Are you coming in as a partner? Because those are important things that will determine what kind of contract you have with your artist.
Speak on all the above. It's good to have knowledge and everything.
You're bill him, right?
So you could, if you were in a partnership, then you would do a partnership deal with your artist. If you were just coming in as an investor, you would get the return on your investment plus whatever the percentage, 10, 20% on top of that on going basis based on the terms that you have. But it would depend on the kind of relationship you guys have.
Yeah. I'll just add to that because we have a lot of new studios, we have a lot of new production facilities that are going up all over the place. So one of the things you want to do is to, as Sapna is saying, be very clear on what that relationship is. Are you investing in just a physical facility? Are you trying to invest in the recordings that physical facility is going to be doing? So are you in the label, the production company, or just the facility? So those are things you want to try and be clear on as between yourselves. And then the documents that flow in terms of how all of that happens, you will have a better sense of what you need. But you need to first try your best to define clearly what the relationship between the two of you are going to be. What you find a lot is two people say, yeah man, we're going to do this, and you're working together and it's great, and you get your first track and it's wicked, and this and that and this and that, and then you're way down the road and you decide, you know what, I probably could be a little better producer than you, so I want to produce this track. And then him say, no, but you was supposed to be production, you don't know about music, and you start to fall out, and then you're trying to determine now, how do we split the 2 million that I put in? But him say, yeah, but I put in 120 hours, and you don't know nothing about so what you end up with is things that come out in the relationship, but at the beginning try and define what that relationship is going to be, all right? Because there are different forms of those relationships. Read the Copyright Act. To the other young man who is an artist, all artists, anybody investing in the creative, read the Copyright Act. Go on the Supreme Court website, Google copyright. There are a number of decisions. Go on our Court of Appeal website. Go on the Privy Council website. We have one of the most interesting decisions, which is based on copyright law, because the contract, well, I shouldn't say that, I've never read the contract, but it appears that the claimant's belief that they owned what was produced, which they paid a developer to produce, was now theirs. But the document that was signed and under which the money passed did not grant the ownership of what was produced to the person who paid for it. And that litigation went over about 10 years. It's a pretty interesting case. And they never won on that point. What they eventually won on was a breach of business confidence. Okay, so that person met with this other party and said, look, I'm going into this kind of business, here's what I'm going to do, and the other party breached their confidence by doing similar things. So it's very important to understand what's on the document, what the relationship is, and how the rights are shared, split, or otherwise transferred between both parties.
Yes, General.
Yeah, man, thank you. My name is Andrew Jackson. I am a co-owner of a production company called Just Bus TV. We have a couple shows. We also do advertising and marketing. We also do TV shows as well. So we've been in several situations where we are looking to sign a contract with an artist. Some of the times this gets very complicated, but esteemed lawyers such as yourself can be very expensive. So I would like to get some advice on the approach you would give to somebody who has some money, but not a lot, as to how to approach acquiring legal services. Because I figure somebody like myself, I can't just call Corey Martin on the phone and say, hey, because I don't have the budget. But coming from yourself, how should an artist approach on the broker side or a business person acquiring the services of a lawyer? What are some of the payment methods or just general approach that you would give to somebody who is creative, who has business opportunities, and knows well enough that they want a good lawyer, not necessarily the cheapest lawyer? What advice would you give them?
Yes, Corey, you're expensive, and I might lie that.
I think this probably varies across all of us. For me, if you can pitch your idea and I can figure out a way for us to build that into something that I can make money for my firm in down the line, we're gonna work. It's just the pitch has to be phenomenal. It's just like, anything else in life, you got one shot. And we do get a lot of people that want to work with us because we're at the best places. We're doing some of the most interesting work. But my practice is always to say, all right, I'm going to give as many people a chance as I can, time willing. And if you've got a great idea and I see, you just need the infrastructure, I will build it with you, and then you will pay.
Hey, and I'll tell you something with Corey. I don't want to interrupt, but I want to tell you. Corey is a partner with Damian Grandison. You say Grandison, Des Rogers. And Damian Grandison, I met Damian Grandison when he was a junior attorney at another law firm. I was a massive star at the time, and he was a Trinidadian lawyer, and he was the only black man in the firm. And just the fact that he was a Trini, I say, yeah, man, the man is supposed to know about doubles and roti. So I had a conversation with Damian. We kicked it off. And Damian has risen through the ranks for years upon years. When I was in a very bad position and broke off from my management and got dropped from my record company and all of that, and got to a point where I was now on my own. And I have to literally probably not pay that retainer fee. Damian Grandison actually says, hey, went to his firm, and at that point, he wasn't even a partner yet, and said, hey, Shaggy's my guy, I'm gonna rock with him, he's not gonna pay a retainer for now, and we're gonna grow with this artist. So it all depends on the pitch, like you say, that some of these lawyers, if you go in there and you sell it, like I said, work the room, you got to sell yourself to them in a way where they believe in you. Because they could sometimes afford to do that for you and give you a blight because they have other artists that are big artists that bring in enough so they can balance it. So, which is what it says. But you have to find the right lawyer. Now, there's a bad part of it which they don't want to talk about that I'm going to put you in on some tea on. There are lawyers that you could get out there. You have to do your due diligence on each lawyer and their track record. If you have a woman where you used to sleep with Wooly man before you, and then you go deal with her and she said, baby love, you are special. I will never do that to you. Chances are she going to do it to you. So the point I'm trying to make is, in doing your due diligence, there's some lawyers that when you check their background, they're in bed with the record company instead of in bed with the with the artist. He just said something with his firm that they're actually trying to move away from record companies and really go more into artist space. I have been in that situation where there was a lawyer that came highly recommended, right? He was a bigwig lawyer. Say, that's the guy. And I was too young to be doing due diligence. I was putting that on somebody else to do, which now I learned the hard way. And at that point, that person was in bed with the record company. So when the A&R comes in and say, hey, Shaggy, use this lawyer. That's another thing. Don't let the record company air, because these A&Rs come to your yard, sit down and eat with your family, and go on like them are your brother. And then when their boss say, hey, he got a hit record, I need you to bring him, let him use that lawyer. And then you use that lawyer, and then that lawyer is in bed with a record company. These things happen. Now, this particular lawyer got disbarred after a while, because when you do that so many times, it catches up with you, right? These guys are smart enough not to do that because they know it does catch up with you, but that is something you have to look out for. Another thing that's a little bit off point that I'm going to say is, anybody here that are parents, got children, that is your biggest job. And you're asking yourself, why does this relate to record company, to music business? Your biggest job is parents. When you never get hug in your life, right? And you're not used to affection and love, when you start go up for a while and start get a little talent, because once you have talent, you're like, it's like vultures. They are attracted to you. When you got raw talent, these untalented people are attracted to you. They want to be in your presence. You walk in a room and you light it up. They're dull as fuck. So they just want to be in your presence to get a little bit of your light. This happens. And if you are a person who just got raw talent, but you have never had people do nice things for you. Your mom was poor. You know, she never buy you a nice shirt or hug you or do all of them things. That person will come in your life and then will come in and say, I go and I buy the pants for you, I buy the shoes, I put on a chain for you and all of them things. And after a while, you get to a thing and you say, I'm a general that, you know, say the man buy me a cell phone. I'm a general that, yo, the man go away for and bomb back and buy me a shirt. And you're now looking at that person as a father figure. You're looking at that person as, yo, the man they do what my parents never do. Especially if you have daughters who don't get no hugs. When man come start hug them and tell them to do all kind of thing and send selfies when you're a kid and them thing there. Because them never get it. I'm telling you, this things happens. When you start, them start give that, you say, I'm a general. And then him say, yo, it's a contract, I sign your publishing over and sign a contract to me. And in your mind, you're saying, I need one of these guys. But I forgot to take that, I'm a general that. I can't carry that, go give me general. Imagine me, I carry a contract, go give me general, and I'm a general buy me shoes and clothes and help me pay all my rent. Chano. Yeah, I'm just go and sign that, yeah, man, because I'm a general that. But if you were raised being used to good shit, get hugs, have your parents put you in position and deal with you right, nobody can be a general. Your parents are your general. Your brother and your sister and your family are your general. You don't have no time for no outside general. Because they will prey on you. Prey on you, especially if you have talent, and suck you dry. So no matter what them say to you, still look at these guys, right? Do your due diligence on these guys, but you need these guys. At least until AI come in, but all right.
Thank you, Shaggy. I think that's it. Thanks for... Oh, there's one more question. Okay.
And this is for you, Roderick, because it seems you are the local, legal representative on the panel, yes? Am I correct?
I think you're correct. Well, Jabari is not practicing. local.
Jabari
But yes, you're
happens to
correct.
be.
You are correct. He happens to be
Jabari happens to be my nephew.
Yes.
I want to big up him father right here, my brother, because you talk about parents, Shaggy. Right? Stand up. I'm a big brother. But we're proud of him. He was a pastor. I know him raised this little youth here. With a youth who is also married to Janet Morgan. It's Denroy Morgan, eldest daughter. And is their son there. See him other son here, so he's another artist. Stand up, Ruben. Is the other grandson.
Nepotism.
But this is so important because they were both born in the U.S. And you see, Shaggy, when you talk about parents, I, as the uncle, all my brothers and sisters, the only one who remain. I'm an engineer. And I came back to Jamaica as an electrical engineer. I can tell you everything about AI and what's going on, ChatGPT, but that's for another forum, right? But there is a connection because Jabari said something, and a lot of the companies we're working with right now, or developers or programmers, are turning to GPT when they have invested so much in their careers. And you have this app, and this is just one of many, that came along and tried to invalidate everything they're doing. But the push right now is what we call automation. Right? They want to automate everything. The robots, the chat GPTs and everything. But it is not working in the real world. And I'm here to tell you why it's not working in the real world. It's not working in the real world because AI can only succeed if it's treated as augmented intelligence. Because the emotional component of it, we have tried it in the organization. We can replicate and get any program to do anything. The one thing we cannot get it to do, and the reason why we will never be able to get rid of real workers and employees, that emotional component, which ironically comes a lot through the artists that is represented in this forum, that they're the carriers. And I don't know if you understand how significant it is then that the cultural, musical component is a savior for what we call humanity. So, proud of this panel. This should be earlier. This need one all by itself, brethren. Big up yourself.
Thank you very much. So thank you for remaining, and we agree. We would love to be on earlier. I really, again, though, just want to thank my colleagues who have come from abroad. People came in on flights at 10 last night. Corey came in this morning because he was closing a deal up to last night. He was still... Oh, good. Right. But still... Still, I want to just thank them for making it because it takes a lot to come and they have been very patient and very open. All right, and thanks again, everyone.
Also for the law school, just for the law school here, we can organize to maybe do a program at your school. So come talk to us and we'll be happy to come out there.